Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to another episode of Manifesting Muslimah. I'm your host, Zara Pedersen, and today we are going to talk about the how. Specifically, the how of your manifestation, how it's going to come into your life, and why it's none of your business. Why you need to stop worrying so much about this specific question and do other things with your time and your energy that is far better spent in those areas than right here. So let's get into this. So if you've been following me for some time, maybe you've read my book or done any of my courses or worked with me one-on-one or in my group, you'll know that I always say to people, you need to know two things: what it is that you want and why you want it. The what is obviously the manifestation itself, as specifically as you can, depending on the situation. Things might change a little bit, but generally speaking, as specifically as you can. And why you want it, the why being the niyyah, your intention for wanting this thing. And this is basically for you to understand your own desires better, whether or not it is actually fueled by you genuinely wanting the thing, or it's because you think you need to want the thing, or that somebody's pushing you towards something that is not necessarily aligned with your purpose in this dunya, outside of being Allah's servant in this dunya and in the hereafter, inshallah. So those are the two things that you need to know when you're going on your law of attraction journey. And that's basically all you need to know. What you need to let go of and not worry so much about is when the manifestation is going to come into your life. This is the timeline, whether it be in 2 weeks or 2 years or 20 years. This is up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah's divine timing. We've spoken about this before. We're going to speak about this many a times again, okay? Where it's going to come, whether it be from this specific job, from in this country, from this opportunity, the where can be so varied as well. So this is also something that we need to let go of, because again, it's none of our business, right? But the last thing that we need to let go of is the how. How is it going to come into my life? Does it have to come if you're asking for more money? Is it going to come from your work? Is it going to come from a side hustle? Is it going to be an inheritance? Are you going to win some money somehow? Are you going to find it? I don't know. Is it going to be a big tax return that you weren't expecting? We don't know. There are so many different avenues, and the how of the manifestation itself and how it's going to come into your life is one of those things, unfortunately, that we get so caught up in. This is because we in this dunya, I spoke about it, I believe it in my last episode about certainty. Either the last episode or the one before that, I spoke about how we desire certainty, how we crave certainty in a world that is really very far from certain. 1 second, my darlings. Wow, get me. I really thought when I did the introduction, I was like, wow, wait a minute. The dogs are asleep. Everything's quiet. The kittens have been fostered. I gave them back yesterday to not back, but, gave them to their foster parents, and they took them this morning to Germany. So I was like, wow, I can actually record a podcast without having to be like, a disclaimer, the noises in the background. And you know what? Allah humbled me real quick and was like, no. You're the one who decides to live in a zoo. So, that comes with certain responsibilities such as background noises. So sit your stupid ass down. I mean, Allah wouldn't speak like that, astaghfirullah, but I certainly do in my mind. So there you go. That was Agua deciding to bark at the maintenance man outside. Alhamdulillah, she does try and keep me safe, so I really can't complain, because it's one of those privileges of having a big dog. It's not my dog, again. I'm just babysitting her while I'm staying here, but I do feel safer. I'm not going to lie. I feel safer. All right. So getting back on topic again with what I was saying, how we crave certainty in a life that is very much uncertain. And the certainty makes us feel safe. It makes us feel protected. It makes us feel like we can, live somewhat at peace. It makes us feel like we don't have to worry as much. Now, of course, certainty in this dunya is very much an illusion. Well, if you ask me, at the very least. There are certain places that we can create an illusion of certainty, and that does give us comfort and peace, but ultimately nothing is up to us. And for that reason, we are constantly living in that uncertainty, because we don't know what's going to happen next. We don't have the gift of foresight, and probably thankfully so. I'm pretty sure that if we were meant to have it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have given us that gift, but he didn't, and I'm sure there's a reason for it. So we will try and create the certainty in whatever ways we can. Quite often, for a lot of people, that means things like having a place to stay. If you can afford to buy, then you'd probably buy. Otherwise, you'd find yourself a rental where you feel safe and protected and feel like you can stay there for a longer period of time, and preferably within a rent, in a rent bracket that you can afford. You'd find yourself an income that is stable. Maybe you'd find a partner or friends and things that are stable, that are loyal and will stick around. And even with all of these things, we've seen time and again that these things, quite often for a lot of people is not necessarily that stable to begin with, and they end up having a partner that cheats on them, friends that lie on them, a rent that goes up, or a landlord that'll kick you out or be unreasonable, and then getting fired or whatever at the job. And so the stability can quite quickly be lost. Anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about today. I'm so sorry. I went on a little tangent there, but I think it's a fun tangent to go down, and just like a fun little thought frame to sort of sometimes, remind ourselves of, because it very much reminds us to be very much sort of like active in the present moment, and also to remind ourselves of our positioning in this dunya, which then brings us to the question at hand, the how, and our role with law of attraction when we're trying to manifest something, and how we need to let go of the how, which again is this need from us, this desire from within us to create certainty. If we know how something is going to happen, then we feel more calm. If we know how the manifestation is going to come into our life, we'll feel more calm. When we don't know how something is going to come in, it creates uncertainty, because it leaves the questions unanswered, and it makes us, to a large extent, feel like it's not protected, it's not safe, it's too uncertain. And the uncertainty makes us feel like we are, running into a dark room unprotected with our eyes closed. And so it's like, is there going to be a wall? Is there going to be a massive drop? Is somebody going to grab me? What's going to happen? Am I going to step on Legos because I'm running bare feet? There's so many things that I don't know what's going to happen. And it could be anything. And that makes us feel quite fearful. It makes us feel hesitant, and it makes us quite often not want to take the actions, because we don't know what's going to come of it. And that can be very, very scary for a lot of us. But here's the beautiful thing. And I really want you, as you're listening to this, to really listen to my words right now. And I don't just want you to hear it, I want you to feel it. We, as religious, God-fearing women, have a safety net. It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it is the most beautiful safety net we could ever ask for. And so when we go into something without knowing the outcome, we have Allah to lean back on. And we have the tawakkul. We can lean back on a divinity, a God that knows everything, that sees everything, that doesn't need to turn on the light when it's dark, who doesn't need a hearing aid to listen, who doesn't need to read a book to know. And we can lean on him when we are uncertain and ask him to guide us through the darkness. And trust me when I say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the best guide, the best protector. And when we do that and we fully lean into Allah in moments of uncertainty, it becomes less scary to walk into that dark room, because we know we have the ultimate protector with us, the ultimate guide. And as long as we keep turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in those moments of uncertainty, Allah will turn to us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if you take one step towards me, I will run at great speed towards you. I'm obviously paraphrasing greatly, so you can Google it and see exactly how he says it. But the fact is that if we just turn towards Allah in those moments of certainty, Allah doesn't just turn towards us, he embraces us, he watches out for us. So he will go above and beyond the smallest little thing that we do for him or towards him. So if we just look towards him, then imagine the great lengths he will go to to keep us safe and come to us in our moments of need. And that is what happens when we let go of the how and we turn to Allah and we say, I trust and I believe that you will guide me to the way that this is going to happen, the best outcome in this situation. But I will not spend time worrying, in fear, in doubt, hesitating. I'm going to take the action inspired by you and the roads and the doors that you open that you open for me as I am moving towards the destination. And I trust that the destination is but a snippet of what the full image is. You have allowed me to see only a fraction of the whole image, but I trust that if the tiny snippet could bring me so much potential joy, that the ultimate picture that you want to reveal to me at the end of this journey is that far greater. I will trust that you will get me to that point safely as long as I continuously lean on you and turn to you and allow myself to be guided by you. Now, sister, honestly, sit with that. Like, I know that was a lot, but sit with that. Feel that. Feel the certainty in that. In a world that is so incredibly uncertain, where the partner you said I love you to and who vowed in front of God and man that he would love you and protect you back, and then he cheated or he left you with debt or whatever, turn around, or it doesn't have to be a man, but like, clearly she's in a mood, isn't she? But, it could be anything, a friend, a mortgage, a bank, I don't know, an employer, a colleague, any of these things, yourself. You know what? Yourself. You said, I'm going to stop eating so many sweets. And then the next day you're like, I'm just going to have another one. And then you binge. In a world where you can hardly even trust yourself. That is how uncertain man is. Where you can hardly even trust yourself, where you continuously make promises to yourself, but you also turn around and break those promises to yourself. The only certainty we have is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Allah is the only one who will make a promise and never break it. He will make a promise and never break it. And trust me, he has made us many promises that safeguards us in this dunya and can lead us to wealth, success, happiness, love, peace, joy, all of those things in this dunya and in the akhirah, inshallah. But it requires of us to stop playing tug of war with Allah. Stop trying to micromanage everything when Allah is telling you let go. Stop coming in and trying to look over Allah's shoulders and saying, what are you doing? What's going on? What's the next step now? Can we turn this blue instead of yellow? Stop. Just stop. Back off and say, I trust that what Allah sees for me is for the very best for me. He is doing it not because it's the best for him, but it's because it is the best for me. We are the only ones who will destroy ourselves in this dunya. Allah will never destroy any of us in this dunya. Allah might stop guiding somebody if they commit shirk or if they don't believe in him, but he will never destroy a person. A person only destroys himself. And so Allah, the only thing Allah will do is, I'll be neutral. I'm not even going to engage with you. And then on Yawm al-Qiyamah, I'm going to have words. Or you're a servant of mine and I will engage. And the engagement will only be positive, even if we in moments deem it to be negative. But he will only engage with positivity. And if something comes that feels like a destroyment, that is from yourself. If something bad happens, that is from yourself. Right? So in the moments when you're sitting down and you're thinking, I feel inspired to do this. I feel like Allah is pushing me towards this specific journey or this goal or this target or whatever it might be. I feel really inspired and motivated. I can't necessarily logically put it into words because Allah doesn't always work around logic. Allah is above logic. So sometimes he will inspire you with something that feels illogical, something that feels completely out of this realm. And so you might sit there and be like, how on earth am I supposed to make this happen? It is not your job to figure out how. That's Allah's job. What you have to do is take steps in tawakkul, in full trust and faith that Allah will figure that out for you. And not even will figure it out for you, because Allah has already figured it out. He already knows what's going to happen because Allah is all seeing, all knowing. So he already knows, like he knows the steps, and he is ready to introduce opportunities and peoples and roads and opening doors as you take the steps. But it requires that you first take that step and saying, Allah, I have full trust and faith in you. So I'm going to start moving towards this goal, even though I don't know how it's going to happen, even though logistically it doesn't make sense to me, even though everybody around me says, that's ridiculous, that doesn't even make sense. I will still continuously take those steps in that direction until you guide me differently or until you make me reach that goal. And Allah will provide the rest of it. That is it. That is literally it. And I want to also really emphasize for you, because I do understand that this is something that quite a lot of us stumble on. You know, we're like, how am I going to make that kind of money? How am I going to meet that kind of person? I hardly ever leave the house. You know, a lot of us, you know, don't really socialize the way we used to because social media and whatever. So it can feel difficult. Like, how am I going to meet a spouse? I go to work, I go home, you know, and then I hang out with the same 3 people or whatever. Making money, it can feel like, well, it's an oversaturated market that I want to get into, or who am I speak with an accent, or my English isn't great, so how could I possibly reach an international market, or whatever. I don't know enough about tech to set up this company, or whatever it might be, right? And whatever the inspiration may have been, I need to be a great singer, a great author, or whatever. It's not up to you to figure out the how, right? And if you don't have Allah, and I really sometimes, and I know that this, I don't mean this in a harsh way, but I feel so sorry for people who don't have God with them. I feel so sorry for people, even myself before I had Allah. You know, I can look back and be like, I feel so sorry for you, like past me, because I'm like, wow, you were really lost there for a minute. Like you had no hope, because Allah means hope. Allah is hope for us. Allah is certainty. And as I said, in a world that is uncertain. And so people who don't have Allah and who use the law of attraction, you know, I can feel kind of sad for them, because I'm like, wow, it must feel really difficult to get on with things, because you can get stuck on the how. And even us who have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can get stuck on the how. Imagine when you don't have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imagine thinking what a lot of the mainstream shirk type law of attraction teachers are teaching, which is that you are the creator of your own reality. Some people say co-creator with the universe, again, so it's shirk, right? Like however you want to spin it, it is shirk. And then, you know, you've got the extreme ones who say like, I am the universe, I am a goddess or a god in my own creation. I mean, astaghfirullah, honestly, astaghfirullah. And imagine having to uphold that level of self-image to yourself and responsibility. I mean, honestly, like it is actually making me, you know, like it's like a visceral feeling within me when I think about that, because it's laughable to me as a person who believes in Allah, not the shirk component. That's not laughable, that's sad, but and scary, but it's the level of self-image and having to uphold that image of grandiosity. That to me is laughable, because we are such fragile creations. You know, we are so emotionally charged, and I'm not just talking about women. You know, like when people say, oh, women are such emotionally charged, men are too. Men punch holes in walls when they get angry and they start wars. I mean, we can really, like, do we really have to argue who's most emotionally unintelligent and aggressive? Like, let's not go there. But we, you know, to think that creatures that like us, that will literally look at a message where somebody writes okay instead of all right, or like great, that sounds good, and like, or like just sends a thumbs up emoji or something instead of saying, oh, that sounds amazing or whatever, and we will take offense because we will read something into it. Like, it takes so very little for our fragile minds and emotions to be knocked over. So to imagine of yourself and to upkeep the level of grandiosity of yourself, that you are the creator of your own reality and that you have all of this untapped power within you. Honestly, to me, it's just like, how, if we supposedly are gods and goddesses and creators of our own reality, what a horrible world it will be, because we are so sensitive. We are so sensitive. And just beyond sensitive, we are so, what's it called, where there's a word I'm looking for right now, where it's like unreliable, but it's like very quickly we jump up and down, like we go everywhere. There's a specific word I'm looking for. I'm hoping you can still kind of get what it is that I'm trying to say here. But like, you know, we switch from a day-to-day basis, sometimes more than that, like an hour to hour. In the morning we're one person, in the afternoon we're another, and on the third we wouldn't even recognize ourselves, right? So to imagine that kind of creature can just sit around and just decide what reality is going to look like. I mean, astaghfirullah, it's kind of scary actually, rather than laughable. And which is why I constantly come back to the fact that we are, you know, so blessed to have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as Muslims to constantly lean back on, not just for our humility's sake, you know, like humble ourselves, but also because how awful would this world be if we as humans had no limitations in creation? I mean, and the world is already bad enough, but just imagine if there were no limitations to man's power as creators, you know, quote unquote creators, right? Astaghfirullah. And how awful, how much worse this world would be, right? So it's such a big blessing to us as Muslims that we have this, to humble ourselves, but also really to lean up against, because we're really taking away the responsibility. And what a beautiful thing. Don't we all kind of want that a little bit? Like, especially with things that can be quite difficult as well, you know, to remove that sense of responsibility even for ourselves in our own lives, right? There's already so much we need to take responsibility for. We don't also want to take responsibility for how the thing's going to come in. It's kind of nice to say, I'm not the creator, Allah is. I will continue to take action in a specific direction that I feel guided and called towards, but I will trust that Allah eventually will, you know, open the doors that need to be opened in order for this to happen, or introduce me to the people that I need to be introduced to in order for them to, you know, carry on my journey or whatever. But we don't have to do that. I really feel like that is such a beautiful, great gift for us as Muslims in this dunya, because without it, I mean, well, you would have to figure that out for yourself. Just imagine that. You would have to figure that out on your own. And yeah, maybe you could, but imagine you can only see one way, one avenue of something happening. Let's take again marriage. You can only see yourself having to go out and socialize with people in order to get married, or having to go to the mosque, wear your prettiest hijab and whatever, like to try and catch somebody's eye after prayer or something. And it's not happening, and that's the only way that you know how. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he sees a million hows, he sees a million roads of how it could happen. And so it's like Allah is the road for us in the law of attraction journey. That is the road to limitlessness. Not that we are limitless, astaghfirullah, because we are not. We're very limited, but because we have the limitless creator supporting our journey. And so instead of us having to figure out something that feels limiting to us, we just have to lean back and trust that Allah will introduce the person. And that could be, you know, you go to the bank to put in a deposit, or something's happened with your bank account, and you need to go in person and speak to an advisor, and then you're sitting in front of your future husband and without knowing it. It could be that there's a flooding in the house, you got to call a repairman, and in walks your husband. It could be that your friend gets married and has like a get together amongst friends, and one of his friends is your future husband. It can happen in so many strange ways, and you don't even think of them. You don't even consider them, because to you it seems, I don't want to say impossible, but it seems far out. It seems crazy. It seems like, when does that happen? All my friends are already married. Yeah, well, maybe that your friend's husband starts kickboxing and starts a class, and then he's like, wow, I just kind of met a guy and I think he'd be great for your friend. Like, you never know. But again, the roads to your manifestation are limitless. They become limited when you try and figure out how to bring it about. But they remain limitless if you keep surrendering it back to Allah. And this is why it is so important when we make a dua to Allah that while we take action still, energetically, mentally, we work on ourselves, we declutter the things, remove obstacles and resistances in our lives, and continuously take inspired action towards the things that we want, however that may look for us, that we leave to Allah the things that only Allah knows and can do much better than we can. The moment we try to micromanage and force something to happen in the way that our narration tells us for it to happen is the moment that we end up with more lessons than blessings. The moment we try to force our way of doing it, our how, into play is the moment we're ending up with more lessons than blessings. Please, if you need to ever write it in a post-it or something and hang it up as a reminder, that's your little thing right there. If you want to, I can't even remember how I said it, rewind, play it again, write it down. That's all I can say. But that is what happens. So trust in Allah. Trust that Allah knows more than what you could even imagine. I want to end this episode by giving you a couple of examples. Now, I've obviously given a few examples from my own life. I'll just recap quickly, and then I want to give you some examples from some of my clients' lives and manifestations and how they've come into how the how was what? How does that even come about? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's how. So my, of course, is my book deal. It had to come through moving back to Denmark, even though I'd been working on, trying to get a book deal for, at this point, 13 years. And it took me 15 before I actually got the book deal, but it came through having a TV show, then an interview following the TV show. And one of the people who were in the 3 parts interview series for this national newspaper was the publisher, who'd actually happened to watch the show, forgot to message me, and then saw me in the paper that she was in part of that series, and was like, I need to write this girl. And then we had a chat, and boom, there we go. But it had to happen in a way, where the road wasn't just, oh, her and I meet in a cafe. It had to happen with all of these other things first, and then came the manifestation. My rose garden, I keep talking about the rose garden in Spain. You know how I tried to manifest a rose garden in the house that that my ex-husband and I purchased together, and it had a beautiful garden, and all I wanted was roses, and I could see the roses in that garden. I was like, I want to manifest a rose garden. What happened instead was we got a divorce, and he bought me out of the house, so the house is not mine. I don't know if he still owns it, it's none of my business. But I sold him my share of the house. And Allah kept saying, because at the moment I was like, I want my roses. Where are my roses? And it never happened. And instead, what happened after the divorce was I moved to Spain. And upon moving into this beautiful house up in the mountains in Spain, there were roses everywhere. The rose garden was right there. And it was at a time when I needed the most to see those roses, when I needed the most this affirmation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's just a couple of examples from my life. There are, of course, a ton more that I could talk about. Like, for instance, how I got the job as a veterinary here in Sicily without speaking Italian, or having an education in veterinary. You can go back, I think that's 2 or 3 episodes ago. So if you haven't heard that, you can go back and listen to that episode. I'm not going to go through it here because it's quite a long story. But again, the same thing, it's to the point where it's how does this even happen? Because Allah wanted it to happen, that's how. So let's talk about some of the things that my clients have experienced. The first one I always thought was so funny. One of the clients from the membership wanted to change her children's schooling system, and she pulled the kids out of her school, and she literally had 2 or 3 days before she had to find another school for them, because she'd been trying to find some stuff and it just wasn't happening. And in that moment she started to sort of have the hesitation, anxiety, oh, this is not happening, did I make a mistake? But then and I remember she said during one of the meetings, I just kind of was nope, I'm just going to stay with it, and I'm going to give it one more chance. I'm just going to give it one more day. And then the next day, someone actually called her, and this was or messaged her or called her, I can't remember. And this was somebody that she hasn't spoken to for 2 years. And the way that I understood it, it was like an old client of hers. So they weren't even friends. This was just somebody who'd done business with her 2 years ago. And this person just reached out and was like, hey, I heard through the grapevine. Meanwhile, this is in South Africa. So, it's not a small country or anything. Like, so it's not like, oh, it was in a tiny village up in the Alps of France or something. Like this is in South Africa. And she's like, I just heard, by the way, that you were looking for something. I have the perfect person. And so she introduced the person, and that's how the manifestation came to be. But again, she would never have thought, oh, let me call this client from 2 years ago and see if they know someone by chance. And she doesn't even know how this person ended up finding out about it, because they don't necessarily socialize in the same groups or anything. But somehow Allah chose for this person to hear about my client's predicament and made sure that they heard about it because they had the right person to help. But again, the how, if we had to figure it out, would have never got there. It would have never reached. Another one of my clients who was working on paying off some debt, and it was really stressing her out and things. And she'd done some private sessions with me, and she's also in the membership. And she one day came to a membership meeting, and she was like, I don't have to worry about the debt anymore. The bank called me and basically wiped out my debt. Like, listen, this is unheard of. In 2024, where everything is increasing, that the bank says, oh, we can actually give you a better deal where you pay less interest. And that basically means you are no longer in debt with us. Basically completely wiping off her debt. Now, I don't know. I don't know about you guys and where you live or where you're living in the world, but the places that I'm from, the bank will never call and tell you can save money on interest that they will earn. They will want you to pay money. And so again, it's just like one of those, like, so unheard of. Like, literally all of us sat at that meeting and we were like, how? Like, the bank called you? Yes, the bank just kind of contacted me. And it's literally, again, we in our minds would never have thought, yes, I'm just going to call the bank and be like, you need to make me pay less. They were probably told her to go F herself, because that's what banks do, or that's at least what we think, right? Maybe you should call your bank. Maybe you could save some money. I don't know. But, they kind of contacted her out of the blue and was like, oh, we've just kind of noticed this, and we'd just like to tell you, you don't owe us any money, and so goodbye, thank you. It's completely unheard of. Very, very shocking. But again, alhamdulillah, because it was the thing that she was asking for. The last example that I'll give you, and then I will leave you, is another client of mine who really wanted to leave the country that they were in. They were like, I want to travel. I want to do something different. And, but I don't know how. Because I don't have the money, and, it's going to take a lot of planning. And also for the sake of her parents, again, like a cultural thing for her. Her parents also needed to make sure that she was safe and that she had an income, a job, all these things, and like a place to live that was safe. And within like the month that we were working together, oh no, maybe 2 months that we were working together, she applied for a job that felt a little bit maybe but above her skills or whatever, and she got accepted. And it was kind of like an immediate position. So she didn't have to wait for months or anything. She could actually leave, like within 3 months of us working together, she had left the country she was in and moved to the States. The job offered her the visa, the pay, the place to live, that was not far away from where she was employed, and it was pretty much immediate. Like, the whole thing it just happened so incredibly quickly. And again, it just really proves to show that when you surrender the how and Allah does what Allah does best, the opportunities come in from ways and aspects and in ways that it can be so difficult for us to even comprehend. A move to another country with job and an apartment, with that kind of stability, in that short amount of time, is practically unheard of. It's of course, again, it's none of these things are impossible, but it's the point that it's not what would have been expected. It is not what logically would make the most sense. It is not what people are thinking this is the number one way that this thing is going to happen and how it's going to come in. And this is, again, because we are limited in our understanding and our knowledge of everything that's happening around us. And when we try to figure things out for ourselves and work it out for ourselves, we can get stuck. We get stuck on the how, instead of saying, I'm just going to take the action of, I'm just going to start applying to things, and I'm going to just put myself out there, and I'm just going to, whatever, energetically rearrange some things. And I'm going to trust that behind the scenes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to do what Allah does best, which is create, be the creator. And I will be the little sim character in this simulation, just running around, bopping around, doing the things that Allah says, this is the direction. And then you go in that direction. This is where it's going to come from. Cool. I'm going to be open to that thing. And, and that's it. I personally find so much joy and comfort, and perhaps most of all, peace, serenity, really, in knowing that I'm not the creator. It allows me to dream bigger. It allows me to not be ruled by logic in my dreams and in my du'as. And I really think that the moment we understand that the how is not for us, it was never meant for us to have it figured out or to try and figure it out, it really removes a great big weight off of our shoulders and allows us to lean up against the ultimate creator that knows how. All right. So that's your little reminder today. Look at your goals, look at the things that you're working towards right now, and see where you may be blocking yourself or blocking for Allah's ways to come in, where you're maybe limiting yourself, limiting your dreams and your du'as to Allah, and open it back up. Open it back up. Push it back again to Allah and say, maybe I was limiting myself a little bit here. I'm going to trust more in you now, and I'm going to trust that you know how, even if I don't. But I'm just going to take the steps that I feel guided towards, and I will trust that you will do the rest. And then just let Allah do what Allah does best. But really, every time you feel like you start blocking yourself, remind yourself, Allah is the creator, not me. And Allah is limitless. I'm not. So every time I have a big dream, an audacious dua, I'm going to put it to somebody who can dream bigger than I can, who's more audacious than I am, but is also a limitless creator. And so I will trust that he will stand by the promises that he has made to us, because he has never, ever broken a single promise to us. And he never will. Alhamdulillah for that. All right, my darling, thank you so much for joining me in this week's episode, or today's episode. I hope there was something beneficial for you. As usual, feel free to reach out to me over on my socials at Manifesting Muslimah. If you want to know more about the process of using the law of attraction from an Islamic perspective, then the best place that I could suggest that you go is in the link in the notes or in my bios in my social medias, and check out my book, Manifesting Muslimah. It's literally a step-by-step guide where I explain all of this in detail as well, and how to get started with it. So, my darling, I will love you and leave you. But until then, until next time, please don't forget to live in love.